Good afternoon, everyone. Can everyone hear me? And hopefully everyone can see me. Wow. Thank you, Sister Makiba. I am, let me get myself together. I'm really overwhelmed by this conversation, but we're having such a rich conversation and a wonderful day already. I don't want to belabor this any longer. So my name is Holly Smith. I have the honor and privilege of being the archivist at Spelman College and had the opportunity to be with this amazing team to plan this. So a huge, again, shout out to Burgess, McKeep, and all our wonderful co-conspirators and comrades. And I have, again, the ultimate pleasure of introducing our second panel, which will be a rich day with some amazing people that I know and some new friends and colleagues. Hey, Gail. So I am happy to introduce our next panel called For the Culture, Black Memory and Storytelling on the Web. So this is about to be amazing with Syreeta Gates, Renata Cherlise, Boni Odoemene. I apologize if I massacred that, Boni, and Camille Lawrence. And the conversation today will be moderated by Dr. Aleia Brown. So again, thank you all so much for being here, and I will be moderating the Q&A after. So please take it away to our wonderful panelists. Thank you all for being here.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that introduction. And I am so thrilled to be here. Thank you to the organizers for creating the space for us to come together. So I feel incredibly fortunate to moderate the For the Culture, Black Memory and Storytelling on the Web panel today. Again, my name is Aleia Brown, and I'm the Assistant Director of the African American History, Culture, and Digital Humanities Initiative at the University of Maryland. With Joshua Crutchfield, I am the co-founder of Black Twitter Storians, and with Adrienne Russell, I am the co-founder of Museums Respond to Ferguson. From both projects, I learned the affordances of organizing in digital environments and the power of convening creative and intellectual communities. Both of these projects also happened outside of institutional spaces. I mention that because while we have to be attentive to and call out the ways that Black stories have been excised from the archives and who is doing the excising, we also have to challenge the notion that the archives are sufficient for holding all that is the Black experience. Today, we have archivists, artists, scholars, and content creators cultivating their own practice of self-determination through building, sampling, and remixing archives. And there's so much to learn from their efforts. All of the work is expansive in the way that it considers Black memory and storytelling. The Gates Preserve, for example, builds a future where hip-hop history can last forever. Black Archives conjures magic and honoring the quotidian. Black and Irish amplifies and grounds itself in the present, proclaiming that we are here in Ireland, and we also stand in solidarity with our family across the diaspora. The Black Beauty Archives amplifies Black past, presents, and futures through the lens of beauty and culture. I could go on and on, of course, about the impact of their work, but I think we would all like to hear from them. So for the panelists, as a way of introducing yourself and your work, can you tell us how you imagine the impact of your work 100 years from now? I'm interested in how you would think about Black people in the future experiencing your work. Or also another way to think about this is, what's the big vision behind what you do?
Cool, I'll get it. What's going on? Syreeta Gates here. First, thank y'all for having me. I'm really extremely grateful to be rocking on a panel with such brilliant Black folks. So shout out to y'all for coordinating and doing this work. I'm the founder of the Gates Preserve. The Gates Preserve is a multimedia experience company committed to archiving and preserving hip hop, more broadly Black and brown folks, in such a way that it lasts forever. And to answer your question, what does the work look like 100 years from now? I imagine a world where it's a beautiful world. I'm like, daggone. I'm thinking like Disney motion picture right now. Yeah, I imagine a world where you don't have to create context for Black folks in the contributions that we've created to the world. Like, you don't have to like dig in the crates. You don't have to, you don't have to think about where is the metadata at. You don't have to worry about getting the terms wrong. You could type in Bamboo or Queens Get the Money or Jay-Z or whoever your favorite person is, and the information that you get is not only accurate, but it speaks to the contributions that these people have created in the world. So that's, in 100 years from now, hopefully we will cancel ourselves out because we have done that work.
I love that. Thank you. I had to mute myself because I was making too much noise, but thank you, Syreeta.
I'm going to follow up after my good sis, Syreeta. We are repping Queens, New York. So my name is Camille Lawrence. I am the founder of Black Beauty Archives. For me, as a beauty practitioner and an archivist, it's really important to preserve and archive the rituals, spiritual, and oral practices that when it comes to identity formation for Black people. And as a professional makeup artist, I felt like there was no place that I could go to find everything that I was looking for in one. And as Syreeta mentioned, when we're searching for metadata, when we're searching for terminology, Bantu knots, finger waves, we want to see us told from an accurate lens. And it was so difficult for me to find that. And so after researching for hours and hours and just sleepless nights, I was like, you know what, why don't I just create the space where I want to be? So in thinking about Black folks in the future and what this project looks like possibly 100 years from now, it's being able to come into a space and feel like this is your home, and being able to see the beauty across the diaspora consistently throughout the years. I feel like with everything that we experience in our lives, one thing that's always been consistent is how we reform ourselves, we transform ourselves, how we show up in a world, how we create new trends, how we recycle what's new and what's old, how we create the foreign, combine the foreign with the familiar. So BBA in the future looks like, I don't know, as a New Yorker, I think of just Times Square and like all of the murals, very Afro-futurism tech energy, just being able to see visuals of what we've done and looking towards the future. So yeah, BBA in the future is just the continuation of what we've always done through beauty and ritual practices. And my prayer is that the diaspora itself will be more of a fusion, but shout out to technology, it's happening every single day. So yeah.
I'll go next. I just want to say, first of all, thank you so much for the invite here, everyone. My name is Boni Odoemene. I am repping Ireland today, and I'm representing Black and Irish. We are an organisation that was founded last summer to highlight the struggles and successes of Ireland's Black and mixed race community. What we've been doing in the last year or so has been collecting the story of the Irish community thus far, where we've been, where we are, and where we're going. The reason behind our creation was directly after the death of George Floyd and the resurgence of the BLM movement, and that was particularly after the Dublin Black Lives Matter protest itself. And myself and my two best friends, Leon and Femi, who were also co-founders, we wanted to see what we can do as young Black men who grew up in Ireland to be a voice for our community, to put forward our people, because for a long time we've been invisible in Ireland. I'm sure many of you don't even know there's Black people in Ireland, you know. So what we wanted to do was to start showcasing these stories and to start telling our story instead of having it being told for us. Where I see our project and what we're doing in 100 years' time for Black people overall is I would see what we do to be that reference point where so many of us can look back and see what is the story of Ireland's Black and mixed race community. What was going on in the summer of 2020 that led to what is going on today in 3020, you know. But again, like the many of us who are on here today, what we're trying to do is we're trying to take the microphone back for our people, tell our own story, and give other people an opportunity to see the world from our beautiful and unique eyes and perspective. So yeah, it's an honor to be here, and I look forward to the discussion.
Hey everyone, it's Renata. Renata Cherlise, founder of Black Archives.
good to be here. So I arrived into this space as an artist and as someone who is just genuinely interested in photography, archives, and storytelling. And so my entry point is the documentarian of my family. And, as I'm uncovering more about my personal history and my family's history, and as I share these pieces, through social media, through Instagram, through Black Archives, I hope that it inspires other people to do the same, essentially, and to be intentional about how we tell stories, right? And I'm also speaking from a sense that I do a lot of archival production, sourcing for documentaries and archival projects. And I think it's important that we allow space for a more nuanced storytelling and representation of what the Black experience is, in the future, because just think, not having people from the outside coming into our spaces and documenting us, coming into our communities, and then we as artists, we as filmmakers, we as people who are looking to preserve our stories, have to utilize those materials to create our own projects and our own documentaries. And if there was intention from the beginning, if we had a way of creating our own space, our own archives, and being intentional about that, I think it brings a different lens to storytelling and to remembering. And so overall, 100 years from now, my vision is just to inspire folks to do the work now so that our stories are more nuanced, in the future.
Renata, thank you so much for talking about intentionality. And that is a great segue into the next topic that I wanted to talk with you all about. So as you all know and experience, the platforms that we use now are sale and ad driven. They're all vying for our attention. But in following you all's work, I'm grateful for the ways that it's invited me to slow down and really sit with different Black experiences. So I wanted to ask you, how do you conceptualize time and pace in your memory and storytelling work?
Cool, I'll hop in again. We don't. Like, there's always going to be, in the history of Black people, there's always something to celebrate. There's always room for acknowledgement. And I think inside of that, we could get caught up in the hype of feeling like it is necessary and or required to keep up with that. Right? Like, specifically looking at hip hop, like, there's always an anniversary, there's always a moment, there's always a birthday, there's always a passing day. And so we just try to be really intentional around giving flowers. Like, I've actually reimagined, yes, I could give like the one sentence spiel on the Gates Preserve. We're really a flower company. That's literally the work that we do. And so inside of that, we take the moments, the people, the things that matter to us in those particular moments, and then we just make magic happen, rather than saying, oh, okay, this is coming up, this is coming up, this is coming up. It's like, who do we rock with? They need flowers yesterday. Let's just make those things happen.
I'm in alignment with you, Syreeta. I do the same. I often don't operate, with social media or on a newsbeat or a headline. Consistency for me is important, that I have my own beat. Sometimes, I'm creating easily, digestible reminders of what the Black life and the Black experience is, but I also create longer form bodies of work, like our editorial 100. It was last November, we actually released our first editorial. It's over 100 pages of just archival stories and reflections. from the Black Archives community. And, I realized that longer reads, especially on a screen, can be challenging, especially after a very intense 2020 and 2021. But I never once questioned whether or not 110 pages were too many pages. So I think for me, I create work with the anticipation that if you don't get to it now, it'll be there for you, whenever you get to it, and so my role is just to show up, to be consistent, to show stories, so that at your own time, at your own pace, when you come across it, it's there for you. I can definitely say, I feel like so much of what we're doing is new. We're building new foundations. We're creating new things every single day. And necessarily the content that we're dealing with is not new, but the way that we're presenting it, the way that we're sharing it is real, authentic. And so I definitely resonate with Syreeta and Renata. I don't really work on I don't look to what's happening in the web. I really kind of go into deep dive into the archive and try to find things that are relevant to time. I definitely feel like when it comes to beauty and identity formation, it's always changing, it's always evolving. There's a lot of improvisation in that. And so there's not many trends or waves of social media that influences how I post and share. I think now I'm kind of really aggressively trying to seek out beauty practitioners and pillars in the Black community who are entrepreneurs and who've owned salons and created safe spaces for identity formation, and finding those elders to get them while they're still here. And as has been said before, give them their flowers, like Julia Walker, who's won an Emmy and has been Whoopi Goldberg's key person for so many years, finding salons in North Carolina and Atlanta and reaching out to those people who were pillars in the community, whose work not only informed how we see ourselves in the world, but their efforts they were our therapists, they are our friends, they're our grandmothers, our sisters, our uncles. They help us show up in the world and feel confident about ourselves. And not to mention the history of Black beauty salons and barbershops have helped fundraise some of the first mayors and politicians in so many cities across the US. So just the legacy of beauty, it's way deeper than the vanity. It's way deeper than the flashiness. It hits our community on so many levels. So just trying to find ways to share that information with the people and open it up to the community for their feedback as well.
And I think for ourselves, what we try to do in our sphere of influence, we try to get people to slow down. Nowadays on social media, it's very quick paced, very fast. What we try to do is try to get people just to take it easy and have a read of this person's story. Our overall aim with some of the stories we do share is that we try to give Black and white people an opportunity to step into the shoes of the many different Black and mixed race brothers and sisters across the Isle of Ireland. So we don't really get too caught up on different fast-paced trends that are going on. Usually where we would react to different things happening around the world would be if it's a major event that's affecting Black peoples. So we were quick on responding, for example, to the End SARS movement. We were quick in responding to, other racial issues that have taken place in Ireland. But overall, what we try to do is try and slow people down, take a breath, and listen to the stories of the many different Black brothers and sisters across the island of Ireland. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's actually what I really was trying to get at with that question, is how we can produce work that pushes people to sit down and take their time and really embody the different materials and stories that you all are sharing. So thank you all for sharing your perspectives. So the next question I had is a bit different. It's about partnerships. So I know that some of you all have embarked on commercial partnerships, and I was wondering if you felt comfortable sharing your thinking around how you preserve the integrity of Black stories while also working with a commercial partnership that is sometimes larger and dedicated to different audiences outside of your own.
I could come in on this one. In the last year or so, we have been in in many different corporate conversations with different businesses, etc., etc. And I wouldn't say for us there's been particular challenges in maintaining our authenticity, but for us, we've always been straight up as to our intentions of our page and our brand. You know, we say to like, we're 100% Black. We're not here to dilute our message. We're not here to make our message, you know, comfortable for certain ears. We're here to represent our people, to speak our truth, and to share our stories. We've been in positions where, you know, especially in Ireland, in comparison to the US, for example, understanding of racial differences is not it's not the same in the United States. So for us, there have been times we've had to, you know, explain things a bit further and, you know, kind of like, right, you don't say that, you know. But we've always been straightforward and honest from the get-go. We're here for our people. We're not here to dilute things. And if a certain, you know, relationship or engagement does not suit our message, then we may not get involved in that. But, you know, it's overall, it's been grand, and we haven't had any issues thus far. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, I'll hop in here as well. I think it really just boils down to intention and integrity. One of my favorite J lines, I could do J all day, but you was who you was when you got here. You were reaching out to us for a very particular reason. You are clear how we give it up in the world. You are clear how we show up. You are clear at the things that we value. And if you are not in alignment with that, you probably don't need to hit us. So we make all of those things very clear from the gate, from the beginning, so that you can do your due diligence to see if the gates preserve is something that you want to actively rock with, partner with, in a way that will be mutually beneficial. I think, you know, my good sis Renata, like, I've had the pleasure to know her for years, right? And inside of doing this work, some things you just don't have to question. And when you do, you call your folks up. Girl, check this out. Yes, there is a bag. The bag is very big, but it doesn't add up. And so you have your people that can remind you, like, also another line, remind yourself, nobody built like you, you designed yourself. So to remind you what you signed up for, remind you of your commitment to the people, remind you of your commitment to folks that not only look like you, but are committed to the work that you are committed to in the world. And so I think inside of having that balance around not only community, being a person of integrity and understanding what your intentions are, they actually make partnering with a variety of people and or companies and organizations extremely easy, because they, you know, they line themselves up. You know, if it adds up, cool, that's great. Let's make some magical things in the world. And if it doesn't, it's like a hard no. It's not like, yeah, I don't know, I'm not sure. It's like, oh, we're definitely not rocking with y'all. And so I think having those things as the foundation allows anything to be possible and making those decisions significantly easier.
Same here, same. For me, this is very much still ancestral work. And before I created Black Archives, I asked permission to be in this space. And, you know, I'm always asking for guidance. And so for me, I'm always considering my ancestors. I'm considering the community before even committing to anything. I do my research. You know, I work with my team, we create a plan. You know, there are things that are just simply, I'm not willing to compromise, right? There are things that, you know, I'm not going to negotiate. This is what it is. Just, you know, like, what else can you say? And so, I mean, I also feel like, me coming as Black Archives and as myself, you know, I have more control over the situation as opposed to, let's say, one of these companies, whoever the enterprise is, you know, hires me, right? And then I feel like I have to kind of play to whatever role I show up at as an employee. But as a partner, here are the things that I'm willing to do. Here's what I'm not willing to do. We can kind of go, or we can kind of move on, right? And so I feel like with us having that freedom and that flexibility, we can always maintain that integrity.
Yeah, that's right. It gives you the freedom to set your own politic and to set your own agenda. All right, Camille, I didn't know if you had anything to add to that.
I would just say, because we are all creating our own spaces, and it seems like we all maintain that same level of integrity to our people, like we're not finna fold just because a bag is there or a corporation is there. For me, a lot of Black-owned beauty corporations have been shut down and bought out, and I've received requests from different corporations to use imagery in a way that I didn't feel like was respectful to our culture and or was used by artists who were not Black. So I just straight up told them, no, these are the guidelines. And if you want to do the research yourself and reach out and find this elder and contact them, yes, but on behalf of BBA, it's not going to happen. And so I think just moving with a purpose in why we're sharing this material and why we're archiving it, because so much of it is sacred, especially when it comes to beauty practices. There are ritual things, there are ancestral things that are passed down through our bloodline that we're investing in, that we continue to create and transform. And so, as everybody said, it seems like we're not gonna fold, and that's not ever gonna happen. And so we don't really have those issues. When you create your own and you are the institution and the table and everything, it's really about the requests we receive and how we choose to respond. So I'm grateful to sit amongst these people that will not fold for the culture, because sometimes it's rare, but everybody on this panel who's skin folk is kinfolk.
All right, that's on that. I also appreciate you all calling in ancestors. Like, that's a whole different level of accountability. And that's something very different than what is part of the traditional archives. So thank you all for sharing your integrity and commitment to the culture. Another thing that I wanted to ask you all, and this is kind of in the same vein, just about the persistence and expansiveness of Black life. How does your work attend to just all of the ways that Black life shows up? How do you create platforms that hold joy, the known, the unknown, love, struggle? What are the ways that you all think about doing that?
I'll probably then jump in on this. For us, because, when we made our page, we were in a situation where, we had to re-explain what it's like growing up Black in Ireland to a lot of white people. And because we're in that situation, we just thought the best way for us to do this is through our own mouths, through our own stories. Like we all know, Black people, we're not a monolith. Our identity is a mix of joy, happiness, struggle, knowns and unknowns. And it's only through hearing our different voices and our different experiences can others begin the journey of trying to understand us a bit better. So when we were creating our page, and we didn't even think we didn't even see it as an archive. We just saw it as a way for our people to have their voices be heard and for it to be picked up in the mainstream. So when we think about how we use our platform to showcase Blackness and to showcase our multifacetedness, our uniqueness, our flexibility, the best way for us doing that is by it coming from the horse's mouth, i.e. ourselves. Even for myself as a young Black lad, I grew up in Dublin. I have no idea of what the experience is for a Black person growing up in the countryside in Ireland. I grew up in the city, so I was quite lucky myself where it's a bit more diverse. So our main priority has always been the best way we can reflect and showcase our community is by our community having the microphone and showcasing themselves on an individual basis. first and foremost, you know. So that's been the way we've been doing it. We've been pushing forward more Black voices and more Black faces, and thank God that, you know, it's been really, really well received across the Isle of Ireland. Crazier than I thought it was going to be. You know, within our first 2 weeks, our Prime Minister had shared our page, which was crazy for us. So stuff like that, and I can go on about different people who've jumped on the pro-Black Irish bandwagon in the last year. But, you know, for us, first and foremost, and this goes back to our founding principles, which is to be 100% Black, to highlight our community, to share our current story, showcase our past, and create a path for our future as a community, as a people. So yeah, it's been a blessing overall.
I could say BBA was born on Juneteenth digitally, Juneteenth 2020, and it was intentional that BBA was born on Juneteenth from a femme perspective, because I didn't want to put more trauma out there. We have enough media, we have enough archives, we have enough movies that just highlights Black trauma, and the joy that we create lives within us, and it exists on so many levels. And so everything that BBA puts out is about joy, but also about trying to resonate and show those feelings and experiences that we have when we partake in beauty rituals and beauty practices. So a lot of the content that we share may be, like, for example, Shaka Khan doing her beauty ritual. She's such an icon from the 80s, Shaka, with her hair and her high blush. Like, we want to know how to get it and do it, but to hear it from them is so much more powerful than just doing it on our own and looking to our ancestors, our peers. Also, when it comes to BBA, it's a lot of intergenerational work that's happening, which I feel like there's disconnects in certain spaces. And so we wanted to dispel that and ensure that the spaces that we are creating are inclusive to all of our community, whether you're trans, whether you're straight, cis, queer, young, old, disabled, doesn't matter. There is a level of inclusivity there, and that always happens in the beauty ritual spaces that we create, whether we're in between somebody's legs, getting our hair braided, whether we're sitting in a barbershop, getting a cut. Even when I used to rock my Caesars, Black men were always welcoming to me to come into, you know, what was seen as masculine Black spaces to get my hair shaved. And so preserving that integrity and that authenticity and sharing it with the world is really, really important to me. So yeah, BBA will continue to do that. And one of the biggest things that really drives me is to ensure that Black art forms are seen as high level. We see so many other institutions and museums that have never credited our art forms as high level. And so when I speak with hairstylists who are representing us in movies and film, representing us on street corners and barbershops, there's so much research that goes into what they do. They're not just artists. We're not just a service we're providing. It's so much deeper than that. And so collecting their oral histories, hearing their voice, recording their practice with their hands, there's so much power in what they do, is really important to me to articulate.
Yeah, I'm good on that.
Yeah, I mean, for me, there's nothing for me to withhold, right? That's not my job. My job is to show up and for us to collectively come up with ways that we can unearth, to inspire, to help provide language, you know, when it comes to sharing and amplifying our stories. And so, I mean, ultimately, I hope that I'm able to cultivate a space where, you know, we protect our stories, we protect our own, what's meant for us. But we're always sharing, we're always giving, we're always expanding. Yeah, so.
Syreeta, do you want to say something, or were you?
I'm good.
Okay.
These folks have done an amazing job.
So I think we all have a picture of the materials that you all work with, but I want to get a sense of the feeling or affect or the vibe that you're after. So if you had to describe the work that you, or the feeling that you want your work to elicit, how would you talk about that.
Interesting. Yeah, I'll definitely hop in here. I want people to feel like when you go to the barbecue and you get that plate of uh when you get that plate of potato salad that you look forward to every year because you know it's going to be amazing. That feeling that you get in your stomach, that feeling that you get putting on your clothes, heading to the barbecue. Like, I want people to feel like that. Like, I want people to feel victorious, like they'll never take the joy from us. I want people to look at our work with such, and be proud. Like, oh, they actually did the numbers. They represented us very well. And so we're very intentional around our aesthetics. We ensure that everything is beautiful. If it's whack, like, yeah, that was not us. Absolutely. Because even just like as a Black woman, I don't want to put my name on anything that is not a representation of what our people, like the standard of Black people is so high that you kind of have no choice but to put magical things inside the world. And so we move, how we want people to feel is directly in alignment of the things that we value, right? Like, archiving is a statement of value, period. Like, that's the quote. And so you can ensure that anything that we put out in the world, whether it's some drops that we have coming up, whether it's Too Married with Love, whether it's the content that we create, shaping the culture through the wire, but tomorrow coming soon, like, everything is going to be a gift, not only to the culture, but it's going to be articulated and curated in such a way that it will absolutely make you proud. No joke.
When people look at the work of BBA, I want them to feel how they feel when they step fresh out the salon, fresh out your mother's kitchen, when you're getting ready to get dressed to go out to a party, whatever it may be, even if you're putting on your Sunday best. I want Black people to see this and really say, wow, like, the spectrum of who we are and how we show up and how we create ourselves and transform ourselves through the decades is so powerful. And even seeing how beauty trends are recycled, and, you know, we're seeing things on runways. I thank God for Black Twitter and all of us online to reclaim what is ours in so many different spaces. And, you know, a lot of times our stuff is deemed ghetto until it's on a runway, but whatever it is, I want us to be able to come into the space with BBA and know that, oh, this is me, this is us. I can let my hair down, I could keep it up, I can be natural, I could be braided, plaited, locked, whatever it is. And with the help of technology, I'm grateful that we can build a bridge across the diaspora. My partner, Michaela Wariebi, she is a makeup artist as well, but she's a continental African. And so now we're working really diligently to go back, you know, to the East and connect with our brothers and sisters there to learn, what are your ritual practices? What beauty things are y'all doing? Like, how has this stayed the same across the Atlantic? How has it changed? And so filling in the gaps of history that we all ancestrally carry with us in our blood, but seeing the physical manifestations of it are really powerful. So for me to flip through and see the first entrepreneurs, the first Avon women. Like, if you hear Master P and Solange's album, he talks about the Avon woman inspiring him, popping her trunk, and like, it's all connected. It's all relative to our community. And for example, I have like RuPaul launched like a limited edition wigs. Like, I have the wigs, like I have old Afro pics from the 70s. Like, I'm now finally getting original packaging and TCB products from the 80s. I have every single MAC collection that has dropped with a Black person. So Mariah Carey, Diana Ross, Tiana Taylor, like, so when we finally pop up and do these spaces and people can see things in person, you can see the fullness of who we are. And so, yeah, I'm excited to keep creating more, and we're gonna be here forever. We don't die, we multiply, so.
Camille, I'm gonna have to borrow that some stage. We don't die, we multiply. I love that. For ourselves, I think in general, the feeling we would love for people to feel when they come across the work of Black and Irish is, do you know that feeling when you stumble across a YouTube video and then you go into the suggestions and you go into another one and another video and another video, or you stumble across a new Netflix series and you're hooked. You have to keep watching every episode. that kind of excited curiosity, you know, when you stumble across a page full of Black Irish people, like, what's going on here? Like, and it's that kind of curiosity and that kind of excitement we want people to feel, that I never knew I needed this, but now I want more and more, you know. For Black people, Black Irish people, Black people in general, what we want our people to feel when they come across our work, when they come across our page, is that feeling of ownership. For a lot of us in Ireland, there's a feeling of about time. There's a page dedicated to us. About time we're telling our own story. About time the mainstream can finally see the successes and the positive contribution that we're actually bringing forward in this society. Not the usual negative stereotypes you would hear on the news or on radio channels or whatever. It is Black people telling the Black story. And we need as many of our Black brothers and sisters from across the world, the US, the UK, the continent of Africa, Brazil, etc., to join us in support of this, because, hello, we're here too. We're Black, we're Irish, we're Africans, we're Caribbeans, we're all this in one, and we're proud. So definitely, overall, we want people to feel excited, to feel curious, and to just get hooked, you know, definitely.
Renata, did you have anything to add?
Sorry, I was trying to unmute. Yeah, I mean, I feel like for Black Archives, when folks come across, you know, the platform in whatever capacity, I just want them to feel like they were seen, and that there is something about the community aspect of Black Archives that they were able to take part in, to remember, an act of remembering, an intentional act of remembering collectively. I think that there's so much power in that. And so I just, when folks come across the Instagram account, whether it's a story on the website, whether it's Twitter, I just want people to feel like they were seen. That's it. That you were here, that you existed, that we acknowledge that, and that, you know, you have something to kind of take with you, and share that. So
Beautiful. I'm in my feelings right now. I'm sorry. This is so wonderful. But the next question, and you all kind of touched on this earlier, a few of you mentioned diasporic connections, and I wanted to ask you all, what are the ways you think digital storytelling has helped you build solidarity and, you know, meaningful, concrete connections across the diaspora?
For me, I'm able to connect through Clubhouse, through Twitter, through IG, with different people in West Africa, Central Africa, and London. And Clubhouse is really booming in regards to conversations that happen late night or consistently about beauty ritual practices and what we're doing and why we make these decisions, and the materials that we're putting in our hair and on our bodies. Is it informed by ourselves? Is it informed by society? What parts of it are we retaining that have remnants of trauma? What things can we reject and build anew? And as I said, my partner herself is a continental African. So I think, and Renata mentioned this earlier, like really being open and opening up yourself and listening to hear your ancestors speak to you and move through you, I think guides a lot of the work that we do. I think often about Toni Morrison, who informed so much of the work that I do. And she explicitly stated beauty was not something to behold, it's something that one can do. And so being able to watch original threading practices in Nigeria of how we thread hair, these active ritual practices are still happening, even though sometimes it was seen and studied by anthropologists or sociologists, and they're living in an archive somewhere at the Southern Journal Association or Harvard, but it's active, it's happening, it's real, it's now. These are not ancient things that are in the past to just adorn and or to lock away to never be seen again. These are things that we need to have access to now. There's a reason why white folks have been studying us for so long. I'm really pressed about the Southern Journal Association and how much money they've invested into studying enslaved people on Sundays, the only days where we could gather to do beauty ritual practices, and how that informs so many of the politics that they've created about putting restraints on our hair. Shout out to the Crown Act, who is actively pushing to ensure that we can show up everywhere and be respected and seen. That act is only passed in 8 states now, but there's so much more work to be done. And so BBA is not only connecting with artists and practitioners, but also politicians who are working to fight against hair discrimination. I have a conversation now that is live with politicians, Jawando in Maryland, speaking about how that act was passed, but just ensuring that no matter where we are, we can connect and talk and share and know that although there may have been a disconnect through migration, through forced migrations, ancestrally in our blood is there, and it will never go away. We're here in the past, present, and there are Black people in the future.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep this real quick and concise. Again, since the beginning of Black folks have also always known how to use technology. And so inside of that, that allows us to receive emails from folks in Brazil who might have a hip hop collection. It allows us to hop on Clubhouse and have a conversation. It allows us to receive a DM and send a DM, both on Twitter and Instagram. It allows us to utilize these platforms that we are geniuses at to connect with our brothers and sisters throughout the world, period, and what that might look like in such a way so that we ensure that not only are their stories told, but they feel a part of the larger conversation.
Yeah, I think for us, we're in an interesting position where the overwhelming majority of Black people in Ireland are first or second generation, or from a first, second generation immigrant background, predominantly Africans, Nigerians, Ghanaians, South Africans, etc., etc. So the majority of us are quote unquote part of the African diaspora already. So what we try to do with Black and Irish is to try and, as well as highlight the fact that, you know, we are Irish people, but also showcase the other aspects of our identity. What this has been able to do in helping us out is it's been able to connect us with the wider Black community, especially in regards to around the conversations around race and racism. And we all, as Black people, we have a shared history, and we also have a shared present and a shared future, I believe. And looking at that shared present, what we all continue to experience is discrimination, racism at different levels, whether you be in the United States, the UK, Ireland, Brazil, France, Netherlands, etc. So by us pushing forward the voices of Black Irish people, we try to also connect and bring together, we try to connect ourselves with the wider conversation around race and racism. And, you know, it's been helpful. It's been so helpful hearing the stories, the very similar stories from our brothers and sisters from outside the island, from the United States, from France, etc. But what I personally feel, especially with social media now and with the different work that we're all doing, even though at the moment the struggle continues on, I do strongly believe that the future is far brighter for all of us as a community. Because before, when it would have been just ourselves in our own individual countries or communities fighting racism, now we have the whole gang across the world working together to try and just get justice for ourselves, period. So I'm personally very confident and personally very proud of what our brothers and sisters, no matter what country they're in, are doing right now for the community and for the culture.
Yeah, we know Blackness travels. Blackness has been traveling since forever. There's always movement, and social media, no matter what platform we're on, I think if we continue to use it as a function, tapping into the resource that it offers, and it allows us to kind of communicate with one another and to cultivate space, cultivate community, you know, we'll always have that connection. We'll always be able to see what connects us, those things that make us unique. We're always able to tap into those bonds. And so for me, I know the work that I do and the work that I primarily show is usually based in America, but I also know, and I also realize that we got folks in the UK, Brazil, Canada, that are also connected, and they're also interested in seeing how things that we experience here, in the South, how that resonates with them wherever they are, right? Because Blackness travels, right? And it's just within us. And so I just want to continue to be mindful the way that I am personally engaging with social media, and how I'm utilizing it as a resource, as a way to build community, so that we can continue to cultivate that space, and to also make sure that we feel protected and seen in this space.
I've heard protection. A couple of you all mentioned protection, and I wanted to know, how do you protect the work, the assets, the knowledge that you put out? How do you protect the materials? How do you protect just the work in general? I'm interested in how you all think about protection.
For me, I definitely facilitate conversations with Black folks and Black folks only. I always want to make sure our spaces are sacred. When we're talking about anything that's related to BBA, it's just us in the room, us on the phone. I try to accommodate anyone that I'm collaborating with to find out the most comfortable ways they choose to communicate. Doesn't matter their age or where they're at. And also just treating the materials with care. Also checking my own self at the door when I'm looking at these things, and checking my own psyche of whatever preconceived notions or bias that have been put into my mind that I didn't intentionally place there. And being more mindful of our community as a whole, to ensure that the materials that I'm collecting represent us in the ways most accurately, in the most accurate way. But that also means connecting with the community who you're showing and who you're portraying. So if I have magazines or ads from a certain generation, I'm going to reach out to people in that space who might live in a senior center, who lived and used these products. I might reach out to a barber who specializes in this one thing, to make sure that I'm describing it accurately. So compared to white, traditional, colonial, archival spaces, I'm on the field in the community every day with our people, talking to ensure that the way that I'm preserving and describing these materials is as accurate as possible, because a lot of them that I'm dealing with, I wasn't alive for. And so those sensory experiences, I also want to be seen and inserted into the metadata of these materials.
For us, I would say we're more about protecting the individuals who choose to share their stories on our page. For a lot of people, sharing or reliving some of the past trauma or past negative racial experiences one has went through can be a challenge, and then putting that on social media can be, it takes courage. So what we try to do is that we try to protect the person from online abuse, from online attack, etc., because we know what Black people can experience online, let's just say. In regards to our work per se, I would say what we try to do overall, as well as protecting the person, but is protecting the authenticity of our work. You know, it's very easy, and especially in the media sphere, in your pursuit for more content, to lose your way and to settle for low, I wouldn't say low quality, but I would say to settle for what you wouldn't have settled for at the very beginning. But so what we always are trying to do is to maintain that authenticity, go back to our founding principles as to why we began what we began, and to always keep pushing that this page is about human beings, about Black human beings, and about maintaining our authenticity, our respectability, and our humanness, full stop.
Yeah, I would say the audacity of anyone who is Black or brown to create an archive is doing the work of protecting the narrative. Like, that's what it is. We've seen what it looks like when it does not happen. So just the gumption, the wherewithal to say, actually, we got y'all. Don't you worry about a thing, will ensure that the narratives of our people, regardless where in the world we happen to be, anywhere from Ireland to Madagascar, that the narrative is intact, that we are celebrating the joy, that we are a direct reflection of how we have moved and shown up in the world for centuries. I think that is, like, you can't talk about one without the other. You can't talk about joy without talking about protection. And we are not only committed to doing that work, but you see it time and time again around how we have been meticulous with the release of the things in the archive, with the things that we have curated that's in the archive, with the new work that we've created from the archive, and then more importantly, how we've supported folks with the monetization of their archive, right? Like hit after hit, line after line, we are about protecting our folks in such a way that they not only feel supported, but that their stories are in alignment with how they perceive their stories to be. And that's that on that.
Incredible, incredible.
Renata didn't get a chance to answer.
I apologize.
And then we'll transition into Q&As from the audience.
I just, I mean, I know that there's always other people, especially in a public space like social media. I know that there's always other folks watching, right? And there's always other people in the room. But I'm intentional about who I'm speaking to. Like, I feel like I know, like, when I'm talking to you, right? Even if there are other people in the room, when I'm having a conversation with you, and I make sure that I'm intentional about those conversations that I'm having. And so, and I'm not afraid of Black people. Like, if I feel like someone is like coming into this space, not honoring this space, not honoring, the memories or whatever the conversation, whatever the experience is, like, I don't have any problems with blocking folks, and until other folks understand that this is a sacred space, right? This is for us, this is by us. You're here, but I'm speaking to my people. So
heavy on the block, heavy on the block.
Yes, well, first, wow, incredible. And again, a tremendous thank you to all our incredible panelists. We're going to transition into the Q&A, and I know we'll continue to have a rich conversation. I, again, want to emphasize to people to please put your questions in the Q&A rather than the chat so we can see them. And while we might not get an opportunity to get to every single question because of the rich conversation, we do encourage you to engage with our wonderful panelists and all the attendees via their social media that has been throughout the chat, and to stay engaged in other ways. So again, thank you. So moving to the first question from Abira Hussein. They say, how does the medium you use impact how you tell stories and who engages with it?
For Black PD Archives, A lot of the medium and materials that we have are cosmetics and materials that are related to identity formation. And so how we tell stories, boom. Okay, so thinking about, opposed to how we traditionally see things in, white-owned spaces that are totally out of context all the time, I want to ensure that whenever we're showing it, showcasing it, speaking to it, that it's being spoken to in its proper context. And so I like showing the ritual practices of people using the materials, taking a deeper dive into what that time was like for those people who were creating those cosmetics at the time. And a lot of the cosmetics back in the day, before they had big production companies like Dudley and Bronner Brothers, were made at home in kitchens. So going back to the root is really powerful for me. There's a lot of power, there's a lot of strength, there's a lot of joy, there's a lot of transformative energy and just peace in our intimate spaces and domestic spaces that are kind of written off as not a real space. And so a lot of that means going into the kitchen sink, going into a salon or a space to ensure that how I'm sharing the materials is accurate. And myself, if I've used it, just going back to those good memories, but it's always a positive, joyous experience to feel and share.
I think for ourselves, our primary platform is Instagram, and so when you're posting stories on Instagram, there's a word limit which we have to adhere to. So that at times may affect the stories we put up. Sometimes may have to shorten words here and there, or just maintain, the most powerful parts of a particular story. However, on our Facebook page itself, there's no word limit at all, so we go ham on the Facebook itself. And then on Twitter, we have the full stories on Twitter. And in regards to how it affects the type of audience we would attract, we deliberately wanted to be on every single platform possible that we can manage, well, with reason, because we wanted to but we wanted to be inside every aspect and every demographic within Ireland. So on Instagram, it's predominantly young platform itself. So a lot of the people who be following us there and engaging on our content are of a certain age range. On Facebook, one of the reasons as to why we deliberately go for the longer stories and we have every little letter and comma is because the Facebook tends to be an older age range itself, and that age range tends to take the time and read more compared to my age range, I would say, online itself. So we haven't. The only real effect that we've had would be the word limit on Instagram. But again, going back to our priorities getting those stories out and having those voices heard. Hence why we're on all forms of social media. So yeah.
Yeah, we gotta holler at you, man. I'm like, oh, social's crazy. But we've been really, really grateful to be able to show some of the collection both in the physical and digital space. Like, it's different when you give Kieran Mayo, who founded Honey Magazine, the first issue of Honey Magazine, and she could go through it. She's like, yo, when we got Lauryn Hill to get to be on the cover of this, like, the energy is different. You literally feel the difference in the room. Like, we've been able to do that for a lot of our like hip hop magazine collection, which I'm really grateful for. And then the complete opposite is doing something like To Marry With Love, in which anyone could participate in it, right? Like, we had a hashtag and we just did it because it needed to be done. There was no intention to have Mary respond. It was like, listen, if Mary don't get her flowers, let's close up the flower shop. Like, it's a wrap. You know what I'm saying? And so we were able to do that on platforms that we know people are already on, right? Like, we did it on Instagram. We did it on Twitter. Why? Because anyone who has ever tweeted about Mary Jane Blige, we wanted you to be able to participate. And even the folks that we got, and I say we, myself, Tarana Burke, Yaba Blay, and Karen Good Marable, who put this together, we wanted to be intentional around, like, for the folks that contributed, whether it was voicemails, articles, videos, et cetera, et cetera. If you weren't absolutely, we didn't even want to rock with you. It's like, we don't need to convince you to participate in any way. And so it was just really beautiful. Like, I felt it was like it was my birthday. I was like, February 9th, I'm very excited about being an Aquarius and also being born on Alice Walker's birthday. But I'm like, listen, January 11th in 2021, very hyped for Mary's birthday. And so we were really, really, really excited to be able to do that in such a way and just create the diversity of platforms, right? Like, yes, you could rock with us on social. Yes, you could rock with us in person. After this Pizza Hut is over, it's going to be ugly outside. We have quite a few things that we've been able to like curate and partner with people to acquire. So we're really, really excited to be back outside. And we want anyone to participate in the work. And I just even think of how I personally move and shake in the world. Like, I want a teenager to look at my Air Max 97s and my Vanson and ask, what did she do? And when I say an archivist, it's gonna be like, oh, she's not a rapper? Like it absolutely changes the mind frame in such a way that it creates new gates that are now open to the entry and participation of this work, of the work that of the folks that's on this panel, of the works that the folks that are in the chat. You know what I'm saying? Like, when young people and old people and your favorite aunties and your uncle who gave you all your swag and your moms and your pops can participate with it all equally, I think that's when you have the ability to change the game.
Longer form bodies of work for me is usually redirecting off social so that folks can take the time to spend with the work, whatever the time that they need. And so I usually create those off social, and like Syreeta said, I really can't wait to get back into the community, right? And so that we can really, build within, off social, right? But I mean, Instagram is a visual first. So, I share a lot of visual stories through that space. The community usually can identify. One of the series that I have is like a where are they now? And so the really cool thing with Instagram and cultivating a space is that folks are able to identify and provide that metadata, right? Provide context in space in lieu of, because sometimes the archives and sometimes the repository doesn't have that context, right? And so, we are able to cultivate that and build and create that language that helps fill in the gaps. And so Instagram, it allows us to do that. Whereas Facebook, we have an older audience there. And whereas Instagram, people are able to identify like an older family member, we have Facebook where people are able to identify themselves, right? And provide that context from a firsthand experience. And it's all been very fruitful, right? Like these are the stories that we need to capture, and just making sure that we're utilizing all of these resources the way that we need to.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much. And just to chime in, when Syreeta, what everybody's really saying, one of the things I enjoy about being at Spelman is you don't have to justify why amplifying the voices of Black women and Black people are important. That's one of the given missions. And I know that's often what we find ourselves in the position, sometimes even having to justify. So thank you all so much for your commentary around that. We had a couple of questions about everyone is feeling this wonderful conversation and, wanted to connect with everybody in their work and the archives. So thank you to Makiba. She just dropped everybody's Twitter contact and Instagram, or social, all the social media platforms in the chat so you can connect with people there. There's a question from Haran Janine. I apologize. I hope I said that correctly. Speaking of accessibility, how might we be more thoughtful or intentional about how the future will access these archives? Is anyone interested in exploring different mediums of preservation, AKA archiving? And Haran ends with the hashtag, is the medium the most important message?
I think about this all the time. I always think about Black people in the future and what that looks like. I'm like, I mean, shameless plug. If there are any like tech folks out there, coders, like, let's get it. We got a lot of things to cook. But in regardless to that, thinking about the importance of like digitization, right? So we're gonna start like a crazy digitization project of quite a few different mediums. So like Hi8, VHS, cassette, like shout out to the Mixtape Museum. Like it's about to get really, really ugly really soon. But also just keeping up with the times. Like I said earlier, like you can't talk about Black folks without talking about technology. So know that wherever the technology will be, whatever it might look like in the future, Black people are going to be on that 10 toes down. So it's ensuring that you have the wherewithal and the bandwidth to stay ahead of the times, to stay in the loop of what's happening so that the people, most importantly, can access it. And not people like, you got to give your firstborn, you got to give blood, you got to give your name, you got to give an address. Like the people like homeboy just showed up and want to see something. Okay, cool, sir. Let me show you how to utilize the material. Now you have access. Go and be great.
I think it's important for us to do that because right now we see that we have so many conversations around digitizing, right? Like we're trying to bring people who, you know, have all these VHS tapes, you know, all of these photographs and bring them to where we are right now, where technology, and I think accessibility for a lot of us, a lot of our communities, you know, they didn't have access to this equipment to bring their content, to bring their family stories, to bring, you know, whatever these treasures are, you know? And so I think if we can get in front of it, right? Like 10, 20 years down the road, you know, we can start having these conversations now so that, you know, we're not left behind.
When I think about archives in the future, I think about a full-on, full sensory experience. So anyone who has different ranges of abilities, it's not just a visual thing we see, it's not just a thing that we hear, feel. So for BBA, like we're working with different folks who work in accessibility, collaborating with other organizations so that we can have physical manifestations to get you into the space like you yourself can relate to that person. Like I think it's something real powerful about seeing that piece of history and having it in your hands. It makes the connection a lot more tangible and it feels so different. So for me in the future, it's not only the cutesy parts of tech, but also like that full-on, full-fledged sensory experience. So yeah, for me, that's my hope. And once Miss Rona goes, I'm very excited to see what all of the phenomenal panelists are gonna do. And also a shameless plug, in the summer, BBA will have its first pop-up exhibition in New York City. So my hope is that that can have different elements of sensory experiences. So yeah, we're here. Black folks are in the future, Afrofuturism all day.
And tomorrow.
And forever.
Amen.
Perfect. Great minds think alike. That's what I was going to say there. But yeah, I think for us overall, it's extremely important that we as archivists and we as Black people who are telling our story continue to look for ways in which we can protect these stories moving down the line. You know, I'm always thinking about it from our perspective that a lot of our stories of the Black Irish community are on platforms in which aren't Black owned, or on platforms which could be here today and gone tomorrow. So kind of like, you know, the way you protect your finances, we need to have a way, a rainy day fund, as we call it here, a way of protecting our information, protecting our stories, and passing these things down the line. So just going back to the question, I'm very open, and we're very open personally, to look at different mediums for sharing, protecting, and saving our stories, because, you know, for too long, Black stories have been allowed to disappear. So we need to, as people, to stay on the front foot, thinking ahead as to this is how far we've gone. So this is how far we've gone today. We don't know how far we'll go tomorrow, but we need to play our part in preparing our future generations in going further than we are today and tomorrow. So yeah, I'm always happy to look at different ways for us to protect our stories, because I think it's the obvious. It's our stories. We need to protect them. So yeah. And actually, and just to quickly add on to that, shameless plug myself as well on this. Literally today, episode 1 of season 2 of the Black Irish podcast has been released. This is Ireland's first ever Black only podcast being produced by our national broadcaster. So if you were to imagine CNBC or Fox, for example, our national broadcaster has never done anything pro-Black like this before. Season 1 was a major success. Season 2 has just been launched. And what we're doing with season 2 is that we're giving people an opportunity to enter the homes of Black Irish people. So look, I cannot promote this anymore for all of you guys listening. I'll put the link into the chat, and please take a listen and hear what it's like to be a Black person grown up in Ireland, but coming from an African home. It's a bit of a madness, as we say here. So yeah.
Yes, thank you all. I'm sorry, I'm getting caught up in this amazing conversation and forgetting to moderate. But we are all in community together, and not to take us too far, but it makes me think of us as embodiment of the archives, our physical self, when our records haven't been preserved, when they couldn't. Yeah, so I hope we can explore this conversation a little bit more. But just again, an incredible thank you to all of our panelists for such a wonderful conversation. Again, thank you to our attendees. We hope you'll stick around, and we hope our panelists will be able to stay the rest of the day to drop more links in and share more information and to be engaged. And we're going to have another short musical interlude care of DJ Nooney again. So please sit back, enjoy the jams, drop your favorite jam in the chat. And again, we look forward to continued conversation. And again, thank you all so much.
Thank y'all. Drink water, you dig? Drink water.
Thank you so much. Slán leat.
Thank y'all.
Thanks, everyone.
Yes, I'm about to play Aretha Franklin. Come on now.